I'm not saying abandon America. I'm saying stop approaching it like it's the only play or the final answer.
Okay, but where you going that ain't got problems?
I'm 57 years old, and to this very day, I'm still being gaslit about my black experiences in the USA.
You can't just opt out of where you live.
The USA is a tool, but not necessarily a destination.
So what you describing is basically arbitrage. What if the most patriotic thing a father could do in 2026 is pack up his family and leave the United States of America? Today's guest says you've been convinced that leaving is quitting, and that refusing to leave a burning building because you built it ain't loyalty. He says it's a trauma bond with a flag on it. This video ain't about politics. This ain't some celebrity escape fantasy. We not here to debate patriotism or tell you what to do with your passport. This is a conversation about environment, economics, and what happens when a man finally audits the environment he's been normalizing his whole life. So let me get this straight. You, Romany Malco, Hollywood actor, producer, got a whole career built in America, and you packed up your kids and bounced?
Okay, first of all, TJ, please don't put words in my mouth. It's not about bouncing, it's about integrating. It's about environment. The systems we live inside of shape how we think, what we value, and what feels possible to us. Sitting complacent in a machine that profits off distraction, conflict, exploitation, and emotional chaos, it takes a real mental toll. So I haven't been running, I've just been integrating.
Integrating? That's a fancy word, but you know what else sounds fancy? How every black man who makes it start talking about leaving. Meanwhile, the ones who can't leave gotta stay and figure it out. That's convenient clarity, my brother.
No, I hear you. But ain't nothing convenient about what I'm willing to do for my family. It's about what I'm not willing to normalize for my family.
Clarify that.
If we have time later in this video, I want to tell you a very important story. But when an economy primarily depends on exploiting weaker nations and disenfranchised groups to sustain, the only way to justify that is by convincing yourself that certain lives are less valuable. You feel it every day in how people look at you and how systems interact with you. The low regard for life as a whole becomes part of the American culture.
Okay, since you want to use big words, let me make sure I understand. You saying if America has to rely on free labor, cheap labor, child labor, and the pillaging of other countries to sustain this economy, it's because they see those slaves, those child laborers, those foreigners' lives as less valuable?
It's deeper than that. America has to indoctrinate you, your children, and even foreigners who've come here into that very belief system. And that's partly the reason we see so many folks applauding the abuse and bullying of their own kind. Their own blood, sometimes their own homeland.
Hey, I'll be the first to admit the U.S. has been a global bully, and the more a country behaves like a bully, the more enemies it creates. And the more enemies it creates, the more enemies it has to defend against, both abroad and at home. The defense requires massive surveillance and security systems.
And those costs don't land on the powerful. They land on the working class. It's like having your wages garnished to help build your own prison, plus paying for the mercenaries hired to guard it.
Damn, you building your own cage and tipping the architect. That's poetic.
That same bullying also requires extremely manipulative media and social engineering to get you to second guess what you're witnessing in broad daylight. Sometimes to justify the most heinous things, sometimes to create a false sense of security, etc.
Okay, but where you going that ain't got problems? You think leaving America means leaving dysfunction? Dysfunction got a passport too, homie. It'll meet you with baggage claim with a welcome sign.
You right. Dysfunction is everywhere, but some dysfunction is life-threatening and some is not. I'm also clear on why it's mandatory to avoid countries that thrive on slavery and war economics. When that's your foundation, it seeps into everything. How we socialize, the schools, the policing, the media, the way people regard others. I took a really honest look at my family last year and realized peace and alignment aren't things to fantasize about. They're non-negotiable requirements, not luxuries, requirements.
Non-negotiable. That's a strong word for a man who's still cashing American checks. You can't call something non-negotiable while you still negotiating with it every day. That's like telling your side piece the relationship is over while you still got her saved under Pizza Hut in your phone. You still cracking when it's convenient.
Well, that's kind of the point. I'm just choosing not to put all my eggs in my U.S. basket. I'm not speaking from theory. I've lived it. And I believe most Americans are using America incorrectly.
What do you mean incorrectly? It's a country, not a dishwasher.
I mean, we treat America like a final destination. when it was designed to be a tool. And here's what they don't teach you. America's founding documents talk about freedom and democracy, but actual structure, the Constitution, the banks, the tax system, were all built to protect the wealthy and keep power in their hands. Notice how public resources flow up, not down, always have. The country functions less like a community and more like a machine designed to make rich people richer. The nation wasn't built for the collective good. It was built as a tool to grow and protect elite wealth. We're just the laborers. We're the product that keeps it running. Living in the U.S. costs so much for regular people. It functions more like a high-fee membership than a wealth-building opportunity. You ever tell your home insurance company you have a leak in your roof, and then they raise the premium for making the claim in the first place? We're paying full retail for America while healthcare, our school curriculum, clean food, clean water, and safety ain't even the norm, let alone a human right. Meanwhile, the people who actually understand the American system know better. So they extract what they need from America and rely on other countries for fulfillment in other areas of life.
Bargain shopping, like a clearance rack for citizenship.
In a sense, yeah. I mean, look at the math. The average American is paying U.S. prices for housing, healthcare, childcare, fuel, taxes, all while earning U.S. wages that haven't kept the pace with inflation in decades. Since I was a kid, gas prices have gone up 1,200% in that same time frame. Minimum wage has gone up 400%. I don't even need to speak about cost of housing. That leaves almost no margin to save or invest. You work to maintain, that's it.
You're speaking facts because part of social engineering is getting people to flaunt and take pride in their debt. That's not building wealth. That's treading water in an expensive pool, and drowning still costs extra. I feel that. But what's the alternative? You can't just opt out of where you live.
Actually, you can. I personally know so many expats and digital nomads, some of which never left the country. They just moved to Puerto Rico. And they're cutting their total living expenses by 30 to 50% or more just by living in countries with better tax exemptions, cheaper rent, food, and healthcare. And here's the key. They're still earning from U.S. clients, U.S.-based online work, even U.S. investments. Same income, fraction of the cost.
So what you're describing is basically arbitrage. Arbitrage is when you exploit the gap between two markets to make a profit. The wealthy been doing it forever. Live somewhere cheap, earn from somewhere expensive, keep the difference. That's why billionaires got homes in Monaco and bank accounts in the Caymans, but sell products to Americans. You saying regular folks can run the same play? Live in Mexico, Colombia, Portugal, cost of living low, but your clients, your income, your hustle still tied to US dollars? You pocket in the spread? That's not running, actually. That's running the same game they've been running on us.
That's exactly what I'm saying. Technology makes it very possible now.
Hey, that sounds good on paper, but how you gonna tell a single mama in Detroit she needs to qualify for the foreign earned income exclusion? She can't even afford to miss a shift, let alone relocate to Portugal. This math only work if you already got options.
I'm not telling her to move to Portugal. I'm telling her to stop being shamed for questioning whether Detroit is her only option. Maybe it is right now, but the goal shifts when you realize the trap isn't just financial, it's psychological. Even if she can't leave today, she can stop raising her kids to believe staying is the only alternative. That's the first exit, the mental one.
Boss, family, if you working your ass off, stressing your ass off, or planning your ass off, but it still don't seem to get you nowhere, what if I told you it had nothing to do with willpower or discipline? I'm hosting a 90-minute live workshop where I'll help you identify the patterns that's actually disrupting your progress, and I'll get you clear on the next steps you need to take so those emotional blind spots never cripple your potential again. You want to work with a real one, link is in the description.
Come on, bro. It ain't a gatekeeping issue, it's a cultural issue. We're trained to believe certain moves ain't for us. Offshore accounts, tax strategy, residency planning, we hear those words and think that's rich people business. But the rich didn't get rich by ignoring those tools. They got rich by using them. We got the game back.
I will admit, even for me, remote work changed the game. We don't need to be wealthy. We just need a laptop and a skill that folks will pay for. Teachers tutoring English, designers, copywriters, customer service. You can work abroad in hospitality and tourism, humanitarian aid. Once again, teaching English.
I think most people are so addicted to familiarity that they can't even process the possibilities. It's like a mental block.
It's like I always say, dog, you don't need bars to be in prison.
Bars. And corporations already play this game at scale. routing profits through Ireland, the Netherlands, Bermuda, low tax jurisdictions. Meanwhile, they still depend on U.S. courts, U.S. infrastructure, U.S. customers, and U.S. military protection for their global interests. They get all the benefits of America with a fraction of the cost. And us, as individual citizens, subsidize everything with our tax dollars, while corporations and the ultra-wealthy optimize their way out of paying the bill.
That's why Apple paying less in taxes than your auntie who work at the strip club.
And we go along with it because we've been trained or conditioned to accept that as normal. I don't want my children being indoctrinated in that way. Rich folks using the USA like a side chick. Rich folks just here for the benefits. Poor folks trying to marry the USA.
Bars. I can't even argue with that. You telling me the wealthy figured out America is a tool and they use it like a tool, while we treat it like a relationship. We loyal, we committed, we putting in the emotional labor, and at the end of the day, we broke and stressed while they on the beach somewhere with our tax dollars funding they sunset.
That's the game. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. I'm not saying abandon America. I'm saying stop approaching it like it's the only play or the final answer. For people of color, the USA is a tool, but not necessarily a destination. Use the marketplace, use the infrastructure, use the protections that benefit you, but don't pay full price for an experience that's depreciating your health, your peace, and your children's sense of possibility.
So what you're really saying is stop being a blind consumer of America and start being a strategist.
Precisely.
Consumers get consumed.
Strategists extract value. The system was built for extraction. The only question is whether your current situation is working overtime for you or just working you overtime. Every system has its dark side, but this system can't sustain without enslaving folks and harming the kiddos.
Damn, that's a different frame. I came into this conversation thinking you was glamorizing running away and shitting on the USA. Now I'm starting to think you might be running the numbers better than most. I still got questions, but I ain't mad at the math. So what about your family? They cool with it?
Here's what I keep coming back to. I don't want my son growing up in a society that preys on his innocence, that quietly preordains what's possible for him. I don't want his potential marginalized because of his skin color. I don't want him boxed into the rigid binary thinking Western culture normalizes. I don't want him being intimidated by borders. I don't want him learning about racism early and then carrying anxiety about his father going to work.
Wait, hold on. You think moving somewhere else means your black son won't learn about racism? You can move to Portugal, you can move to Costa Rica, you can move to the damn moon. Your son's still gonna be black and somebody somewhere gonna remind him. By the way, now would be a good time to hit the like button if you like something, and if you motivated as hell, hit that notification bell. But if you invested in seeing this channel grow, I'm gonna need you to share this with your folks. Now let's get back to the program.
No, I'm not trying to protect him from knowing racism exists. But if you read any of Mammy Phipps Clark's studies, you understand where I'm coming from. I'm trying to protect him from being shaped by a power structure that frames him as a minority when globally he clearly is not. I don't want him growing up believing access to basic human rights, human dignity, is a privilege instead of a given. That's the difference. It's not about hiding reality. It's about choosing which reality he gets immersed in during the years that form who he becomes.
So you saying environment is a curriculum?
Hell yeah, environment is a curriculum. And right now, the American curriculum teaches black boys that they are problems before teaching them that they are possibilities. I want him raised in a place that doesn't rely on fear, dominance, or constant defense to function. A place that doesn't glorify violence, hypersexuality, hypersurveillance, or equate racism to patriotism. Dog, I spent 50 years unlearning most of what the USA taught me about money, history, the power structure, and the world.
You know that's gonna trigger some folks, huh? They gonna say you ungrateful. They gonna say America gave you everything. They gonna say you came to America and made it, and now you wanna talk bad about it.
You know, a little bit of research would have clarified all this. I didn't come to America. I was born here. In fact, I went to high school in the Deep South, and the lie I'm not going to tell myself is that I turned out okay. Seeing grown men at the construction site yelling racial slurs and wanting to jump my father after a long day of work because he was a black man was not healthy for me as a youngster. It just fed my anger. Being pulled over by the police 6 days in a row took a toll on my neurological system. Being pulled over more than 100 times between the ages of 18 and 30 made me feel caged. Having the cops called on me for playing with my oldest son at a park in Hermosa Beach, California in broad daylight is not an indicator of progress. The cop that pulled up showed respect to me because he was a fan of my movies. Had I not been a recognizable public figure, things could have gone very differently. I'm in a 40% tax bracket, and in order for my children to get quality education, I have to pay somewhere between $70,000 and $120,000 a year for private school. If I'm gonna pay that much, let it be in a place where school viewings are a lot less likely. My lady, the mother of my child, couldn't get prenatal care in Florida because our insurance policy's fine print only covered California health care. I'm a father of 3 in a country where 460 children per year vanish. All these security checkpoints, surveillance technology, airport security, and Delta couldn't tell you where the kids went, couldn't tell you what TSA employee stole your luggage. I'm 57 years old, and to this very day, I'm still being gaslit about my black experiences in the USA. This is not an absence of gratitude, it's the presence of growth and the acceptance of North America's reality. I want my boys spending time in places with less surveillance, less policing, less KKK members, less government involvement, less white supremacy, and more built-in supportive community, more connection between neighbors, friends, and family, more humanity baked into daily life. That's where they thrive. That's the environment I want shaping their neurological system and who they become.
Okay, you've been to other places, man. You know it ain't that simple. Every country got its trade-offs. You trade one set of problems for another. The question is, which problems you willing to live with?
You're right. It ain't all peaches and cream. But for example, when we were living in Puerto Rico, I definitely felt safer and the kids had richer experiences in less time. We were island hopping weekly. Replicating that from Florida is now harder, more expensive, and increasingly constrained. The United States is no longer merely insulated. It's becoming isolated culturally, economically, legally, ethically, and spiritually. The walls going up ain't just physical, they're psychological and spiritual too. I'm not glorifying this future utopia of living in other places. I'm very aware that no matter where we go, nothing will be given. But I'm not looking for handouts. I'm looking for peace. I'm looking for safety. I'm looking for a like-minded majority. We got time for a quick story?
We got nothing but time.
Okay, quick story. We used to go to St. Thomas as a quick getaway when we lived in Puerto Rico. Me, my lady, the kids. We discovered St. John, a province of St. Thomas. Small island, beautiful, simple, goats walking through this restaurant on the beach like they got a reservation, good food, kids running around barefoot, water looking like somebody put a filter on real life. But every time I'm walking through a spot, past the bar, past the shops, I'm thinking, I don't see one black employee, not one. Couple days go by, same thing. Restaurant to restaurant, bar to bar, I'm clocking it. No black bartender, no black server, no black hostess, nothing. The one time I saw a person of color, she was working in the Julu district and she was from Puerto Rico. She just comes over for the work and then flies back home. So one day, I'm picking up ceviche at the bar at this restaurant we at. Manager comes over, introduces himself, says he's a fan of my movies. Real friendly, about my age. So we're chopping it up and I finally just ask him, I say, hey man, I noticed something. And it's not just y'all, but nobody on this island seems to employ black people. What's that about? He kind of smiles and says, oh, that's because we rent from them. They're the owners. I said, the owners of the bar? He goes, oh, the black people own the land. They're the landlords. After slavery overturned, they slowly started taking ownership of the land on the island. Back then, this was Danish territory. The plantations, the sugar, the big houses up on the hills. And that land belonged to white planters and foreign owners who didn't even live here. When slavery ended, nobody lined the freed people up and handed them deeds. The white planters kept the land. Same folks who owned everything before emancipation still owned everything the day after. But here's what nobody tells you. The sugar economy was already dying, had been dying for decades. And while all that was happening, the global market was shifting. Beet sugar out of Europe started undercutting sugarcane prices. It couldn't compete. The whole plantation model was collapsing under its own weight. So when emancipation came, it didn't kill the economy. The economy was already on life support. What emancipation did was remove the only thing keeping it breathing, free labor, slave labor. Without enslaved hands doing the work for nothing, the math didn't math no more. The model wasn't just immoral, it was unsustainable. And without slaves to exploit, it fell apart. So the plantations got abandoned, not because the land couldn't grow anything, but because the plantation system itself was no longer viable without slavery. There's a difference. The land wasn't dead, the empire was. And you know what the planters called it when they left? Barren soil, useless. They told the crown, they told investors, they told anybody who'd listen that this land was worthless now, couldn't produce nothing, and that the free slaves were lazy. You couldn't run a sugar empire on it no more, but you could fish along those shores. You could graze goats. You could grow food for your family. You could still live off it. The freed slaves understood that. And they didn't want to keep working plantations even for wages. Why would they? That system damn near killed them and their ancestors. So they sought out small plots of this abandoned land, started their little fishing villages. Some managed to buy small plots when prices collapsed. Some got pieces as gifts from desperate or guilty owners looking to disappear or dump their liabilities. Some just stayed on land nobody came back to claim and eventually filed for the deeds. Over time, little by little, that turned into black-owned parcels for which structures like this were built. There was no official here take it back moment, just families pouring blood, sweat, and tears into what colonizers had written off as wasteland. Families refusing to let go of what everyone else abandoned. So when I say they own the land, I don't mean somebody did the right thing after slavery. I mean the planters left. The sugar died, and the people they tried to break outlived them. They turned abandonment into ownership. That's why you don't see them behind the bar. A lot of them are landlords now, leasing the property to foreigners who want to be here. Then he grabbed my plate and said, "Let me get you a fresh plate of ceviche."
Damn, they outsmarted and outlasted the empire.
5 things stood out to me about that story. 1, it's just my opinion, but just like the sugarcane industry in St. John, the United States economy cannot sustain itself without free labor. Watch my video on the 13th Amendment. Slavery is still legal in this country as punishment for a crime. So you think they're building more prisons and immigration detention camps for law and order? Those are the new plantations. They've been running immigration detention camps like these in Arizona for ages, and tomorrow's slaves already got bunks waiting for them. But unlike the Danish in St. John, the people who own everything here will not abandon the USA. They're restructuring. These corporations, these banks, these elites aren't walking away from a failing system. They're retrofitting it, doubling down on what made America wealthy in the first place, not reforming, reloading.
In case you haven't noticed, everything we talk about on this channel comes back to one issue: failing to follow through on the things you say you want. If that's been your pattern, TJ and I are hosting a live 90-minute workshop where we identify what's interfering with your follow through and connect your idea to the thing that makes it worth committing to. If that sounds like something that may help you, link should be in the description. Now back to the program.
2, the idea of ownership in the United States is largely a fallacy. Nothing you spend money on truly belongs to you in any permanent sense. Everything is leased, regulated, or subjected to state and intelligence oversight. Property here is no more yours than property leased abroad. A hate group decides to burn your establishment down, there will be no consequences, just ashes and amnesia. In the USA, there are no permanent rights, only conditional ones. So if I'm renting either way, I might as well rent somewhere that isn't actively working against my mental health and safety. 3, no one is coming to give you or your family relief. Not the government, not the economy, not some policy shift or reparations check. Significant financial relief ain't coming. Significant equity ain't coming. Significant ownership in anything, forget about it. You have to strategically scrape and scrap for whatever you want in this world, no matter where you go. Not because you deserve to struggle, but because that's the cost of building something that can't be taken away. 4, you have to be able to identify windows of opportunity in places that most people overlook. As far as I'm concerned, opportunity is wherever the hell you can find it. And 5, no matter what you believe you're owed, the future belongs to flexibility and adaptability, strategic perseverance, integration, and borderless networks. You want to spend the rest of your life being risk-averse and insulated, waiting for somebody to hand you what they never will? Help yourself. But my family will not be insulated or intimidated by borders.
Boss, I can agree with that. It's like the whole country waiting on a healing fantasy. One thing I can say about the future, the strong will survive, but it's the niggas who adapt to change that's gonna feed them. Bars. But let me push you on something. You a public figure. You got access most black men don't have. You walk into a room and people know your face. They treat you a certain way. How much of your optimism about living abroad and bouncing back and forth is based on reality that most of us don't have access to? Do you think the average brother from Baltimore can just pick up and relocate his family to another country? That's not clarity, dog. That's privilege wrapped in philosophy.
Look, I'm not saying everyone should do what I've been doing. I'm saying look at what we're normalizing. Look at what it's costing you, not just financially, but emotionally, psychologically, physically. We're stressing more and aging faster. We become dependent on pharmaceuticals much earlier in life now. I'm not blind. I'm aware that in many situations, the respect or courtesy I receive in public isn't even a given. I know it's often tied to my visibility. Respect for black men in this country is not a default cultural practice. It's conditional, and conditions change.
That's real. And again, what about the people who can't afford to take the risk you take? Who ain't famous? Who ain't willing to give up the convenience, the infrastructure, the familiarity of American life? The ones who ain't got your resources, your connections, your platform. They just supposed to suffer while you find peace in paradise? What's your message to them?
My message is this: ain't no paradise. The world as we know it, the global economy is changing. Even if you can't make a permanent move, take that red bottom money, take that Chanel coat money, take that flip money and expose your family to other environments with different histories and different social dynamics. You might be surprised. It's a great form of curriculum for your children, and it clarifies things about the USA you should be grateful for, that you should be leveraging, but it also clarifies the things that are counterproductive to your personal health, your value system, your moral beliefs, and your children's psychological development. And even if you can't leave, you can stop participating in the parts of the system that are destroying you. However you feel about your judicial system, political system, financial system, educational system, healthcare system, prison system, military-industrial complex, keep in mind that our media is 100% complicit in all of it.
Bars. And sadly for most folks, American media is the closest thing they have to a higher education.
Turn the news off. Curate your own media. Stop being seduced by the political noise and vote local. Protect your children's minds from the psychological conditioning, because this ain't about escaping a political figure. This is about expansion, broadening of territory, and exposure to alternatives.
No, I get it. I get that. It's about removing our children from the constant psychological conditioning of a media conglomerate designed to gaslight, promote violence, division, and perversion.
Finally, and hey, just for the record, TJ said that shit. I didn't say it, so don't cancel me, cancel him. No matter how you frame it, our media has been the most harmful weapon used against the American public. It controls narratives, perspectives, behaviors, and social cadences for both adults and children. And unfortunately, some people buy into it hook, line, and sinker.
It's like religion. Some folks are blindly carry out violent acts based on unsubstantiated news stories.
But you don't have to partake in that mess. Regardless of what they tell you, you actually have a choice. So even if you can't leave the country, you can do your best to leave the programming. That should be the minimum. That's the baseline. The passport is plan A, but unplugging from the machine is something everyone can start now, like today.
I agree. Stop playing cards with people who keep dealing from the bottom. Look, I ain't fully convinced, but I hear you. What really stood out to me in this conversation with Romany Malco is how it actually mirrored a study I read about in a book called The Body Keeps the Score by Dr. Bessel van der Kolk. He references an experiment where researchers put dogs in kennels and shocked them repeatedly. The dogs would whimper, cower, cry, defecate on themselves, just trying to survive the pain. Now, there was a control group of dogs in cages too, but those dogs never got shocked. Here's the part that stuck with me. When they finally opened the doors to all the cages, the only dogs that escaped was the ones who had never been shocked. The dogs who had been traumatized with shocks, they stayed, even with the doors wide open. They had convinced themselves that freedom wasn't an option, that an alternative life wasn't possible. They couldn't even see the exit no more. Psychologists Martin Seligman and Stephen Mayer call that behavior learned helplessness, the refusal to acknowledge or pursue alternatives based on past traumatic experiences. Your nervous system stops believing escape is real, so you stop trying. It's called learned helplessness. And I wonder that if you took the United States of America and renamed it the United Cages of America, How many of us are operating from that same place? Learned helplessness, doors wide open, still sitting in the kennel, still flinching at shocks that ain't even coming no more. If you think that might be you, I want you to watch this video next, because it could literally change the trajectory of not just your life, but your family's.